Here we go. Here we go. Tonight is the big debate where millions of Americans will be asked to think back to 4 years ago, June of 2020, when the economy had just plunged into the worst recession since the Great Depression. Unemployment got as high as 30% in some parts of our country. Food and toilet paper were in short supply. America was in a state of complete panic as COVID saw no sign of abating. Hospitals didn't have enough ventilators and morgues were so crowded bodies had to be placed in refrigerated trucks. And tonight, voters will be forced to decide, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? I don't know. I can't answer that question. This is the mop-up for June 27th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. I don't know if we're better off than we were 4 years ago. I just can't decide. Please hit the notifications bell so you never, ever miss an episode. And don't forget to like this episode so I remain in your feed. Subscribe to my channel, and I have a new edition of my newsletter. It's out today, so please subscribe to my newsletter as well. I'm hosting a debate party, a debate watch party tonight on Zoom, and you're all invited. The link to the registration page is in the description of this episode, or go right now to shopdavidfeldman.com or davidfeldmanshow.com and hit the button that says Debate Watch Party, and it'll take you straight to the registration page. Doors open at 8:30 p.m. We'll watch Trump humiliate himself, and then I'll open the floor to ridicule him as I record an audio podcast, which drops first thing Friday morning. Please participate. I invite you to come and talk. It's just going to be me talking to the listeners. There is a $2.50 registration fee to keep the MAGA morons out and to defray some of the costs. So there is a $2.50 registration fee. The room might max out. That's another reason I'm charging a slight registration fee. I know money's tight. I will figure out a way to do this again where people who can't afford the registration fee can contact me and I'll let you in. If you would like a transcript of today's episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. These transcripts are made possible by the idiots who purchase useless crap over at shopdavidfeldman.com. I'm sorry, did I call the people who buy my garbage over at shopdavidfeldman.com idiots? I meant to say morons. They're buying stuff like this coffee mug with Rudy's mugshot on it. This is my get-rich-quick scheme, and I've sold 3 of these so far. These are mugshots on coffee mugs. I'm going to be voting Republican pretty soon. This is a coffee mug with Trump's mugshot on it. Get it? It's coffee mugshots. I am telling you, this thing is, I've sold 2 of these. Look at that. And I'm telling you, a year from now, I'm going to be a MAGA Republican. I'm going to have so much money. The Trump-Biden debate is only moments away. Trump is playing the expectations game, going back and forth. First, trying to portray Biden as an old, doddering fool who can't string together a coherent sentence, while at the same time calling Biden an experienced career politician who's had 50 years practice in the Senate, which is considered the world's greatest deliberative body. Trump, at a rally over the past weekend, said Joe Biden will be jacked up on amphetamines and will be, quote, getting a shot in the ass right before the debate starts. Here is Dr. Ronny Jackson, now a Republican congressman from Texas, who was Donald Trump's personal physician at the White House for 4 years. You might remember Jackson was all set to be named head of Donald Trump's VA until they looked into his behavior at the White House, and he was quickly withdrawn. Jackson used to be a rear admiral, but he was recently demoted down to captain after a Pentagon investigation concluded that while Dr. Ronny Jackson served in the Trump White House. He was often showing up to work drunk and on sleeping pills. According to the Pentagon, he was also abusive towards co-workers at the White House. So they demoted him from Rear Admiral to Captain. Everything Donald Trump, everyone Donald Trump touches turns to crap. Dr. Ronny Jackson, a former Rear Admiral, a doctor, left the Trump White House and he got demoted. There are reports Dr. Ronny ran a pill farm inside Trump's Oval Office, handing out uppers and downers to whomever said they needed it. He was kind of like the Dr. Nick to Donald Trump's Elvis. So here is Dr. Ronny Jackson, now a congressman from Texas, opining on Fox News, just guessing what kind of pills Joe Biden's doctors could be giving him to pump him up for the debate. Dr. Ronny Jackson seems awfully familiar with what kind of pills to prescribe a president before a debate. It sounds like Dr. Jackson is just rattling off a list of pills he left around in his Oval Office medicine cabinet before leaving the White House. Here is Dr. Ronny Jackson.
Those drugs are out there. They treat the cognition part of it. They try to, make it where he can think straighter and he's not lost and confused as much. And then there's drugs that actually just increase alertness, like Adderall and other types of amphetamine type drugs, maybe Provigil, things like that. And then there's a host of drugs that try to take the agitated edge off of most of these cognitive disorders. So I feel like they're probably giving him a little bit of all of this. They just have to get it just right. They all have different times of onset. They have different duration. They interact with each other. So it's a challenge, but I think they have no choice with what they're working with. They don't have much to work with.
Yeah, it sounds like you had 4 years of practice on Donald Trump. You pretty much know your pills. You really do. Well, the narrative coming out of the Trump camp is Trump has entered enemy territory tonight by agreeing to get cross-examined by CNN's Dana Bash and Jake Tapper. This is their spin. If Trump does well tonight, he can claim he was brave and took on the left-wing media. But if his performance is gaffe-filled, which it will be, and his lies are corrected, which they will be, Trump will spin it by accusing CNN of conspiring against him. Trump campaign spokesperson Karoline Leavitt was cut off during an interview on CNN by the host, Cassie Hunt, after Leavitt accused the debate moderators, Bash and Tapper, of having it in for Trump. And Cassie Hunt kicked her off. She said, "You can't come on my show and trash my colleagues." Of course, this move, kicking Leavitt off, played perfectly into Trump's narrative that CNN is hostile territory. Now, we know in a few hours during the debate, CNN will correct Trump's fire hose of lies. They'll try to correct some of them. And then, in an attempt to appear fair, they will correct some minor inconsistency of Joe Biden's. Now, look, Donald Trump is an inveterate liar. We know this. The Washington Post counted something like 50,000 lies that he told while president. Everything that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth is a lie. Seriously. And we have reached a point in American politics where reporting facts, telling the truth, and pointing out lies is now considered liberal bias. And this is precisely why, in the past week around the world, 1,400 temperature records were broken. 1/3 of Americans tonight are living under a heat advisory. The World Meteorological Association, according to Semaphore, reports that nearly 500,000 people around the world die each year from excessive heat caused by climate catastrophe. But Semaphore says 14% of all Americans are absolutely convinced there is not a single shred of evidence that the climate is heating up. Now, we're not talking about debating as to whether or not climate change is man-made. We're talking about 14% of this country being essentially flat earthers. 14% of this country think climate change isn't happening. Tornadoes in New York City, record heat, and still 14% think climate change isn't happening. So when Trump lies, when we say we can't believe how Trump is able to get away with all this mendacity, I can't believe it. Believe it. He didn't invent lying. He didn't even perfect it. The oil companies did. If you can convince 14% of the American people to ignore their own burning skin, how hard is it really to convince them that an election was stolen? Tom Hanks and Hillary Clinton run a child trafficking ring, or that Donald Trump and the Republican Party care about the working class. These lies didn't start with Trump or the Republican Party. It started with the oil companies in order to continue burning fossil fuels the way we're doing, in the face of incontrovertible evidence right outside your window, undeniable that we're killing ourselves. In order for us to continue burning fossil fuels, then we must be tricked and lied to. We must be tricked into living a lie. Climate change is destroying the planet, and because we are doing nothing to stop it, the entire premise of our existence here on planet America is a lie. It's not Trump. It's not the Republican Party. It's their benefactors, the fossil fuel companies. They've been lying to us and convincing us to lie to ourselves for decades. At least when Rome was burning, the Romans said, "Hey, Rome is burning. America is burning," and we don't even discuss it. Do you think it's going to get mentioned tonight during the debate? We won't discuss that America is on fire because Republicans are too busy making us fight over whether the Ten Commandments should be posted in our classrooms. Trump and the Republican Party learned to lie this way from their benefactors, the fossil fuel industry. If you can convince people that climate change doesn't even exist, how hard is it really to convince them that tax cuts for the rich reduce the deficit? How hard is it to convince the American people that there's an epidemic of late-term abortions where babies are born after 9 months and then, as Donald Trump says, executed by their doctors? How hard is it to convince millions of Americans that the migrants are terrorists who want to steal our jobs, even though we have a fertility crisis and need more people coming into this country to prop up our economy while paying into Medicare, Social Security, and the rest of our social safety net? It was the oil companies that created the alternative universe of think tanks, news networks, pundits, and politicians who lie for profit. Meanwhile, the debate is scheduled for a little later this evening, and we are hearing that in his preparations for the debate, Joe Biden has been coached to go out of his way to make Donald Trump appear unhinged. In other words, Biden will just let Trump speak. The state of Louisiana is being sued in federal court by the ACLU, as well as the Freedom from Religion Foundation and Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, Dr. Barry Lynn's, the Reverend Barry Lynn's old organization. They are suing after Louisiana's Republican Governor Jeff Landry signed into law last Wednesday a bill mandating that the Ten Commandments be permanently displayed in every Louisiana public classroom. Here is Governor Landry defending the bill.
The interesting thing about the First Amendment, and I heard it in one of the comments that you played, is this separation of church and state. I challenge anyone who says that to go find me those words in the First Amendment. They don't exist. It's a metaphor that was breathed into the First Amendment by a liberal Supreme Court in the 1930s.
You illiterate, stupid hayseed. But what would you expect from Louisiana? It's the place where Mike Johnson comes from. It's in the First Amendment, Otis, the Establishment Clause. The government should establish no official state religion, you effing moron. That means in the Establishment Clause, in the First Amendment of our Constitution, it means public schools, which are government entities, are forbidden from endorsing one religion over another, you inbred, cousin fornicating hick. The Ten Commandments is not universal, okay? It's part of the Judeo-Christian tradition. But the United States is not a Judeo-Christian nation, no matter how much the Louisiana governor insists it is. We have, living in America, Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, agnostics, atheists, worshipers of Satan like me, and thousands of other religions. Thousands of religions are observed in this country. And not a single one of them, according to the First Amendment, not a single one is allowed to take precedence over another. So it's in the Constitution, you ignoramus, you knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing Neanderthal, and that's unfair to Neanderthals. It's in the Establishment Clause. Fully aware of centuries of religious war in Europe, our founding fathers knew that religion didn't belong in the public square. That's precisely why the First Amendment bans the establishment of a state religion. Yes, the term separation of church and state is nowhere in our Constitution. Aren't you educated? That's something you learned your sophomore year in high school, that it's mentioned in the Federalist Papers, but not the Constitution. But the Establishment Clause is, which means you, Governor Landry, are free to believe whatever you want, just leave it out of our politics and our government, which means leave it out of our public schools. Our founding fathers understood that religion gets people killed because it instills moral certitude, and there is nothing more dangerous than moral certitude. When you attach a higher power to a political argument, it's impossible to discuss that political argument reasonably, because it's impossible to argue with Jesus. It's impossible to prove or disprove what Jesus had to say about abortion and same-sex marriage or climate change, unless you read the New Testament, where you won't find anything. Republicans succeed in convincing, let's call them low information voters, instead of morons, MAGA morons. Let's just be polite and call them low information voters who should never have been born. Let's just be polite tonight. Republicans succeed in convincing low information voters that cutting food stamps isn't just what Republicans want, it's what Jesus wants. And once you have people convinced Jesus wants something, there's absolutely no way to convince these idiots otherwise. It's all one big con. Organized religion is a big con, and when politics embraces organized religion, the way Trump and the Republican Party have, they become one big con. And there is no bigger con artist than Donald Trump. So of course he's going to embrace the evangelicals and the Southern Baptists who believe all this crap. Here is Trump on the Ten Commandments at a Faith and Freedom conference in Washington, D.C. last week.
Who likes the Ten Commandments, by the way, going up in the schools?
Yes, let's all cheer the Ten Commandments. Yes, we're all in on the Ten Commandments. Go on. Go on, Donald.
They think it's such a bad thing. I said, has anyone read the thou shalt not steal, thou shalt...
Oh, good. Has anybody read this? Thou shalt not steal. This is good. Donald Trump is now going to recite the Ten Commandments. Okay, so thou shalt not steal. Go on.
Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt... I mean, has anybody read this?
Not you. Not you. Has anybody read this? He calls it incredible stuff. All he can remember is thou shalt not steal. I guess he has a psychological block on thou shalt not commit adultery. There's also you should worship no false idols and have no gods, no other gods before you. And I believe Republicans have violated those two commandments. The second, they nominated this orange-stained turd. Because Trump, right now, is convincing these morons to worship him. He's encouraging Republicans to take on another god. He is running for president as Jesus.
And I have the wounds all over my body.
I have the wounds all over my body from all the paperweights Melania threw at you. Continue.
If I took this shirt off...
If I took this shirt off, the entire audience would vomit. Go ahead.
If I took this shirt off, you'd see a beautiful, beautiful...
set of double D breasts. Natural. Go ahead. What would we see if you took your shirt off? Person. We'd see a beautiful person. Yeah. You got the wounds of Jesus. This is what he's doing. This is what he's doing in the run-up to November. Go ahead.
But you'd see wounds all over me. I've taken a lot of wounds, I can tell you.
If this were in a movie, you'd go, no, you got to rewrite this. Nobody would believe this. Nobody would suspend disbelief this much. He's taking wounds for us. That's what he says. So he's not only stealing from Hitler, but he's also stealing from Jesus. The guy is Satan. He just sent an email, a fundraising email out to supporters claiming when he was arraigned in Fulton County last year, he was, quote unquote, tortured in jail, like Jesus. He is asking us to imagine the unimaginable suffering of Donald Trump. You simply can't insult the stupidity of the American people any more than this. Monday was the second anniversary of the court overturning Roe v. Wade. Mother Jones reports that in the past 2 years, since Roe was overturned by Judge Alito, it has been much harder in many states to get an abortion, but the number of abortions has increased dramatically nevertheless. Trump, during the speech before the Faith and Freedom Group, took credit for Roe getting overturned as the crowd began chanting, "No dead babies, no dead babies." These really are creepy, sick, demented people. We are getting reports that the senior evangelical pastor of Gateway Church, Robert Morris, who Donald Trump has identified as one of his close spiritual advisors, has resigned from leading one of America's largest evangelical congregations. Morris resigned after admitting to inappropriate sexual contact with a woman. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. It wasn't a woman. It was a 12-year-old girl. Paul Pressler, one of the leaders of the 41,000 churches that make up the Southern Baptist Convention, is dead at the age of 94. The Southern Baptist Convention, with more than 16 million members, is America's largest Protestant denomination. It was founded in 1845 as a pro-slavery splinter group. A pro-slavery splinter group in 1845. They broke from the Northern Baptists because the Northern Baptists consisted of way too many abolitionists. The Southern Baptists, after choosing the wrong side in the Civil War, went on to support Jim Crow, segregation, and fought the civil rights movement all the way up until 1995, when they finally issued a formal apology for their more than 150-year war against black people. And it was then, in the late 90s, after apologizing for their bigotry, that the Southern Baptist Convention put the LGBT community and women's reproductive freedom into its crosshairs. Same bigotry, different victims. And Paul Pressler, he led the way. Pressler played a key role in the Southern Baptist Convention's drift to the far right and warm, creepy embrace of the Republican Party. It was Paul Pressler who nudged the Southern Baptists into opposing abortion and same-sex marriage. And Pressler's opinions carried much weight, since he also served as a judge on Texas's 14th Circuit Court of Appeals. Because of leaders like Pressler, the Southern Baptist Convention didn't just condemn the LGBTQ community, it officially stated that the mere desire to engage in a homosexual act is sinful, quote, impure, degrading, shameful, unnatural, indecent, and perverted, unquote, which is all the more reason to at least try it. The Southern Baptist Convention, thanks to Judge Pressler, still to this day equates homosexuality to adultery and pornography. Of course, it opposes abortion and isn't too keen on feminism. I am all for religious tolerance, but I refuse to abide by religious intolerance. Southern Baptists, because of their leadership, are responsible for a lot of pain in this world. Jesus said, "Love everyone and take care of the poor." These are not Christians. Meanwhile, the Southern Baptist Convention refuses to recognize same-sex marriage and won't ordain any ministers who are openly gay. All thanks, in no small measure, to Judge Paul Pressler, leading conservative board member of the Southern Baptist Convention, who insisted homosexuality is an abomination, dead at the age of 94. What more is there to say about Paul Pressler? What more could I tell you about this man? Other than the Houston Chronicle reported 6 years ago that Paul Pressler was fired as a youth pastor in 1977 for allegedly grabbing the junk of a teenage boy while the two were naked in a sauna. Also, back in 1977, two teenage boys stepped forward accusing Pressler of inappropriate touching. That would be devout Christian Paul Pressler, Judge Paul Pressler, dead at the age of 94. Pressler was more than a judge, youth pastor, and board member of the Southern Baptist Convention. He was also part of a law firm in Texas, where, according to reporting in the Houston Chronicle and the San Antonio News, a male associate quit after Pressler demanded they both get into a hot tub naked. According to other reporting, the law firm provided Pressler with young male personal assistants who would report to work not at the law firm's office, but instead they would report to Paul Pressler's Texas mansion. Two of these personal assistants went on to accuse Pressler of sexual assault. That would be men, two men. In 2004, Pressler paid another man $400,000 as part of a settlement after this young man said while still in high school, he attended Pressler's Bible study class and ended up getting let's just say, violated by Pressler, held down and violated by Pressler. Pastor Pressler took a liking to this young high school student and then, according to the lawsuit, proceeded to violate forcibly the young teenage boy 3 to 4 times a month inside Pressler's Texas mansion. The victim also filed a lawsuit accusing one of the other leaders of the Southern Baptist Convention, that would be Paige Patterson. I think it's L. Paige Patterson, that's the full name. The lawsuit accused L. Paige Patterson of covering up for decades Pressler's serial violations of young boys. This lawsuit against the Southern Baptist Convention ended in December of last year when 7 other men stepped forward saying they too were sexually abused as children by Pastor Paul Pressler. The Southern Baptist Convention immediately settled with these victims for an undisclosed amount. Judge Paul Pressler, Southern Baptist Convention leader, an adjudicated serial rapist of young boys, dead at the age of 94. My condolences to his wife, Nancy Avery, who stood by him every step of the way, his 3 children, his 7 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren. Wow, that's a lot of children. Yep, Judge Paul Pressler, Southern Baptist Convention leader, sure loved children. How many suicides do you think Paul Pressler is responsible for? How many members of the LGBTQ community were beaten up or killed because of Paul Pressler's ministrations? How many women stayed in violent marriages, carried their uncle's fetus to full term, or gave up on their dreams of social mobility because of Judge Paul Pressler? One thing Pressler got right: there is evil in this world. Paul Pressler shaved the face of it every morning. Like I said, Jesus only taught us to love one another and take care of the poor. Religious leaders who teach us that Jesus opposed abortion and same-sex marriage, they can go straight to hell. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. I am hosting a debate watch party tonight on Zoom starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. After Trump humiliates himself, I'll open the floor for ridicule as I record an episode of my podcast. I hope you can join me. I'd like to meet my listeners, and this is a rare opportunity. We used to do this a lot a few years back, and then things went haywire, but I'm going to try to do it again. So please go to shopdavidfeldman.com or davidfeldman.com, or the description of this episode. Look for the Zoom link. There's a $2.50 registration fee to keep the MAGA morons out and to defray some of the costs. If you would like a transcript of today's show, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. The transcripts are made possible by the listeners who bought my Rudy Giuliani coffee mugshot. It's a mugshot of Rudy Giuliani on a coffee mug, and we have a mugshot. We have Trump's mugshot on a coffee mug. This is my get-rich-quick scheme. I hope to see some of you in about an hour and 10 minutes. The doors open in an hour and 10 minutes in the Zoom room, and we'll watch the debate together and make fun of this idiot, Donald Trump, who is, well, I'm not going to say Satan because that's an insult to Satan. I'll see everybody later. I don't know if Bob is here. Thank you for moderating the chat room.